The warning lights pulsed crimson across the monitoring station. Buried deep beneath Kepler 442b, Lieutenant. Commander Felteron slammed his four-fingered hand on the console as the emergency beacon screamed across his screen. His blue skin drained to a ghostly pale when he read the frantic transmission flooding in from Proxima Centauri III. Colony Administrator Zelanis spoke through waves of static, her voice trembling with terror. The peaceful Valari settlement had been enjoying another serene harvest season when the black ships descended from the clouds. The Korath Empire struck without warning. Insectoid soldiers spilled from their landing craft like a plague of ruin. The gentle herbivore colonists had no weapons, no militia, nothing to stop the invasion tearing across their world in mere hours. Velterin watched the feed with rising dread. The Korath troops moved through the settlement with predatory precision, separating families and driving civilians toward looming transports. Their chittering language carried no mercy as they sorted captives into labor groups. The strong would toil in far-off mining worlds until their bodies failed. The weak would be executed immediately to conserve resources. The Valari had evolved on low-gravity worlds where the greatest danger was falling from tall plants while harvesting fruit. Their culture knew nothing of killing or war. They built homes from living trees and filled their days with art and music. Now they faced conquerors who treated subjugation as instinctively as breathing. Velterin checked his tactical readouts and felt despair coil in his chest. The closest Union fleet patrolled 3 sectors away, at least 3 standard weeks distant. Even if Admiral Catherine received the distress call instantly and launched without orders, the Korath would finish their slaughter long before help could come. The insectoid war machine never lingered longer than needed. The station's archives carried exhaustive records on Korath strategy. They conquered with terror and overwhelming force, breaking all resistance before it could rise. 12 heavy cruisers escorted by 40 destroyers sealed the skies while 50,000 troops swarmed the ground. Their technology equaled most Union fleets, but their sheer numbers and cold efficiency made them nearly unstoppable. Velterin stared at his comms panel and weighed the one choice that made his scales prickle with unease. The restricted databanks contained contact codes for species deemed too dangerous for standard diplomacy. Earth held that status, flagged with warnings that unsettled even veteran Union officers. First contact logs spoke of a world-defying reason. Humans had evolved where colossal predators hunted in packs, where storms could kill in moments, where the Earth itself sometimes swallowed entire cities. Somehow these beings not only endured but flourished in conditions fatal to most species within days. The human envoys had arrived at the first Union summit with casual tales of surviving ice ages lasting millennia, of wars that burned entire continents, of weapons capable of erasing worlds. When questioned about their planet's wildlife, they described creatures that made Korath soldiers seem tame in comparison. Bears, sharks, venomous serpents, parasitic wasps, and thousands of other horrors sharing their homeworld. What unsettled Union officials most was how humans spoke of such dangers. They showed no fear, only a pragmatic familiarity with threats and the will to master them. Their children played games teaching combat skills. Their myths glorified soldiers and battles. Their entire society believed survival demanded constant readiness to face any danger. The Union drafted strict protocols keeping humans at arm's length. Trade occurred only through mediators. Diplomacy took place on neutral stations under heavy guard. Most species preferred to ignore the Deathworlders rather than imagine what they might unleash in open war. Velterin accessed the emergency frequency for the human colony ship patrolling the Outer Rim. The new frontier carried a full crew of these apex predators, officially registered as an exploration and colonization support vessel. The restricted archives hinted their real capabilities stretched far beyond the peaceful mission profile. His claws shook as he drafted the transmission. Direct human contact demanded special clearance that normally required days to secure through official channels. The Valari did not have days. They scarcely had hours before the Korath completed loading their captives and left for the labor camps. The signal leapt across the void toward the new frontier stationed near the galactic rim. Felteron attached every scrap of intelligence available. Korath fleet deployments, troop strengths, tactical projections, and most urgently, the countdown before innocent lives vanished forever. Captain Jake Morrison intercepted the distress call during a routine sweep through empty space. His weathered features tightened as he absorbed the data while the bridge crew gathered around the glowing displays. The information outlined overwhelming force arrayed against defenseless civilians. Standard Union policy would require endless debates before authorizing intervention. Morrison summoned his senior officers to the Situation Room, where they spread the files across the table. The core fleet had arranged itself in flawless textbook order, certain no meaningful opposition would arise from such an isolated colony. Their troops on the surface moved with the confident precision of predators who had never faced serious resistance. Lieutenant Sarah Williams studied the transport manifests with mounting fury. The Korath intended to scatter prisoners across 3 distant mining complexes within their empire. Once divided, Valari families would never be reunited. Those too young or frail for labor would be executed before the ships even reached orbit. Colonel Rick Barnes analyzed the combat figures with a soldier's cold eye. The odds were brutal for any standard rescue mission. 12 heavy cruisers could turn invading fleets into wreckage in minutes. 40 destroyers overlapped defensive arcs to block ambush attempts. Ground forces had dug in with fortifications capable of repelling anything the Union normally fielded. Morrison met the stares around the table and saw his own resolve mirrored there. The new frontier carried advanced systems engineered for deep space hazards. But more critical than weaponry was something the Korath had never encountered in centuries of conquest, a mindset forged by a species shaped through relentless survival trials on a death world. The choice crystallized in Morrison's thoughts, with the calm certainty of a man sworn to shield those unable to fight back. The Union could waste time arguing procedure while civilians perished, or humanity could act as it always had. Eliminate the threat swiftly and without compromise. Morrison keyed the combat protocols, initiating steps that would deliver the galaxy a harsh lesson about the cost of predation. The tension aboard the new frontier thickened as his command staff surrounded the holographic sphere mapping Korath positions. Enemy vessels locked Proxima Centauri III within a seamless orbital wall. Their weapons covered the planet where thousands of terrified Valari awaited judgment. Chief Engineer Lisa Carter scanned the readouts with growing unease. Her voice carried the blunt realism of someone who knew precisely what their systems could handle. The new frontier had been designed for exploration and colonial support, not direct war against an organized empire. Its guns could crush pirates or rogue wildlife, but 12 cruisers carried destructive power capable of leveling continents. Morrison listened, weighing every concern while his mind focused on their actual advantages. The Korath anticipated no resistance here. Union fleets moved slowly, predictably, always bound by diplomacy before action. The invaders had grown complacent after decades of unchallenged conquests, expecting frightened worlds to surrender without a fight. Commander Tony Rodriguez slid additional tactical data across the table, tracing Korath maneuvers from previous campaigns. The veteran strategist studied the patterns, his expression tightening at the same conclusion. These forces relied on fear, not actual defense. Their vessels clustered in tight formations, designed to impress planetary audiences, while offering perfect kill zones to anyone with real combat expertise. Dr. Michelle Adams delivered the psychological analysis that would shape the entire operation. Her study of intercepted Korath transmissions exposed a species convinced of its role as the galaxy's natural apex predator. They had subjugated 47 worlds across the last century, always meeting opponents who surrendered once outnumbered. Their military doctrine never evolved to handle determined resistance because they had never faced any. The Korath warriors fought with the confidence of conquerors who had never suffered defeat. They relied on overwhelming force to crush opposition before it could organize, then ruled through terror and brutal public executions. Their reputation, not their tactics, proved their deadliest weapon. Morrison felt a thin, cold smile form as he absorbed every detail. The Korath Empire thrived on the fear of species who viewed violence as an aberration, a last resort interrupting otherwise peaceful lives. None of their victims came from worlds where existence demanded daily life or death decisions simply to witness another sunrise. Morrison reached his conclusion with the calm certainty of a man forged by decades of protecting the defenseless. The New Frontier would not stage a rescue. They would not negotiate or try to intimidate the Korath into retreat. They would do what humanity had always done when predators threatened innocent lives: eradicate the danger entirely and ensure it never returned. Lieutenant Sarah Williams plotted jump coordinates designed for stealth approach. Her expertise included navigating regions near black holes and neutron stars where sensors failed and radiation storms shredded unshielded craft. Those same skills would now let the New Frontier slip inside the Korath perimeter before technological superiority could matter. Colonel Barnes activated full combat protocols and began briefing his assault units. His soldiers represented an enemy the Korath Empire had never encountered. These men and women had trained on worlds where the atmosphere itself tried to kill them. They understood survival sometimes required violence so swift and final the enemy never adapted. Chief Weapons Officer Danny Sullivan inspected their armaments with the quiet precision of someone who knew failure meant death in vacuum. The New Frontier carried systems built for clearing asteroid belts and disabling pirate vessels. But wielded by soldiers schooled in true warfare, those tools could deliver annihilation. The ship's artificial intelligence initiated battle simulations rooted in human doctrine. Where most species minimized casualties and preserved infrastructure for diplomacy, human strategy emphasized destroying threats fast and utterly. The AI computed approach vectors, firing solutions, and extraction routes with the ruthless logic that had allowed humanity to survive its Deathworld origins. Communications Officer Kelly Murphy prepared the transmission for Union Command. Her message would remain simple and factual, offering other species one chance to evacuate before human military doctrine converted the Proxima Centauri system into a warning no empire could ignore. Dr. Ryan Clark coordinated medical teams to receive Valari, survivors who would likely suffer from trauma beyond anything his training had prepared him for. The gentle herbivores had never endured violence on the scale the Korath unleashed upon their world. Healing their bodies would prove simple beside helping them process what they had witnessed and what they were about to witness. Morrison stood before the bridge windows, watching the stars drift as the New Frontier altered course toward Proxima Centauri. His crew moved with the silent precision of veterans who understood exactly what came next. They were not rushing to the rescue like mythical heroes. They were responding to a threat against defenseless lives with the full fury of human military capability. The Korath Empire had built its empire upon fear spread among peaceful species. It had never imagined what might happen if prey summoned help from creatures who treated combat as part of existence itself. Admiral Thekfar and his fleet were about to learn the difference between intimidating farmers and fighting apex predators. The New Frontier surged forward, carrying 50 millennia of survival instinct toward an enemy grown complacent with easy conquests. Morrison knew that within hours, the galaxy would learn a harsh lesson about the price of threatening those unable to defend themselves. The Korath had called Deathworlders expecting another helpless species. Instead, they would discover why evolution had shaped humans into the ultimate survivors of a hostile universe. The New Frontier dropped from hyperspace at Proxima Centauri's edge. Like a phantom rising from darkness, Captain Morrison stood on the bridge as sensors revealed the systematic destruction unfolding across the Valari colony. Smoke plumes rose from burning villages, while transports loaded prisoners into waiting slave barges. Lieutenant Commander Maya Johnson launched her recon drones with the practiced skill of one who had mapped countless hazardous star systems. The tiny craft dispersed through the outer system using stealth designs created to evade territorial space predators that attacked anything larger than themselves. Within moments, her screens filled with precise intelligence on enemy deployments and patrol routes. Admiral Thekfar commanded his forces from the heavy cruiser Dominion, stationed in high orbit where its guns covered every point below. His displays showed absolute control across the captured system, with destroyer squadrons sealing every approach vector. The insectoid commander felt satisfaction at another flawless conquest, adding thousands to the Empire's workforce. Morrison studied those formations with the cold eye of a predator sizing up prey. The Korath arranged their fleet for intimidation, not tactical strength. Their clustered positions formed dense kill zones, impressive to onlookers, but dangerously inflexible against surprise assaults. They deployed like hunters, expecting victims to flee rather than fight. Colonel Barnes coordinated his assault forces as they prepared for what human doctrine labeled hostile force elimination. His soldiers inspected gear with the discipline of professionals who knew small errors in battle created catastrophic consequences. These troops had trained in environments where air itself could kill, where gravity shattered bones, where radiation reduced flesh to ash in seconds. The first hint of human arrival came when Korath destroyer Captain Veer lost contact with his outer patrol ship. It vanished without distress call or system warning. Minutes later, 2 more destroyers fell silent across the perimeter. Their final transmissions reported impossible weapons slicing through armor like paper. Morrison watched red icons vanish from his tactical display as enemy ships blinked out one by one. Human gunners used targeting systems engineered for precision strikes against asteroids and rogue comets. The same technology that shattered mountain-sized rocks into fragments now obliterated warships whose plating had never faced human firepower. Lieutenant Sarah Williams coordinated fighter launches with expertise forged navigating Earth's orbital debris fields. Her pilots executed maneuvers unimaginable to species evolved in calm, predictable environments. They wove through 3-dimensional space like hunters chasing prey through tangled forests, using debris shadows for cover while closing undetected. Admiral Thekfar received panicked reports as destroyers disappeared without explanation. His sensors recorded energy bursts beyond known classifications, weaponry bypassing shields as if they weren't there. The few visual contacts obtained showed craft moving in patterns defying basic physics as he understood them. The Korath had never confronted enemies who treated vacuum combat as naturally as atmospheric dogfights. Human fighter wings plunged through wreckage fields, using gravity wells to cloak their approach vectors. They struck from impossible trajectories and vanished before enemy tracking systems achieved lock. Each strike. The Korath fleet maintained its defensive formation more for appearance than actual effectiveness. Their ships clustered tightly, designed to impress planetary observers while forming perfect targets for opponents with real combat experience. Dr. Michelle Adams delivered the psychological analysis that shaped the battle plan. Her study of intercepted Korath transmissions revealed a species convinced of its superiority as apex predators. Over the past century, they had conquered 47 worlds, always facing enemies who surrendered when confronted by greater numbers. Their doctrine never evolved beyond intimidation because no rival had ever forced adaptation. The Korath fought with the arrogance of creatures unaccustomed to real opposition. They crushed resistance swiftly, ruling through fear rather than strategic skill. Morrison absorbed this data with a predator's calm. The Cath Empire rested on terror directed at civilizations that viewed war as tragedy, not survival. None of their victims came from worlds where existence required daily life-or-death choices. His decision formed with the clarity of a man who had spent his life defending others. There would be no negotiations, no rescue attempts. Humanity would do what it always did when predators threatened innocence: eliminate the danger entirely. Lieutenant Sarah Williams plotted jump coordinates to enter the system unseen. Her navigation mastery came from guiding ships near black holes and neutron stars where radiation erased sensors in seconds. Those same methods would now nullify Korath technological advantages. Colonel Barnes activated combat protocols, briefing soldiers hardened on hostile worlds where nature itself demanded strength and precision. They trained to strike before enemies adapted, ending battles before they began. Chief Weapons Officer Danny Sullivan inspected systems with the care of one who knew mechanical failure meant death in vacuum. The new frontier carried tools built for clearing asteroid fields. Yet in human hands, they became instruments of annihilation. Its AI calculated approach vectors, prioritized targets, and plotted escape routes with the same ruthless efficiency that had kept humanity alive on its unforgiving homeworld. Communications Officer Kelly Murphy composed the message for Union Command. Brief, clinical, warning others to clear the system. When the attack began, Proxima Centauri would learn why Deathworld predators made poor enemies. The pilots knew wounded predators could still kill, and letting even one core ship escape might doom other innocent worlds. Colonel Barnes established his command post inside the former Korath Administrative Center, where enemy officers once planned the systematic exploitation of Valari resources and people. His intelligence teams recovered vast files detailing future conquests, slave labor routes, and locations of possible surviving captives in Imperial mining colonies. The data promised to guide future operations against the Empire's remaining assets. The final phase began as Morrison ordered the total destruction of all Korath military infrastructure across the system. Weapons crews targeted orbital stations, supply hubs, communications networks, anything that could support enemy return. The objective was not merely victory here, but ensuring the Korath Empire could never again threaten the Valari or use this system as a staging base for terror. Sergeant Billy Johnson led the strike on the last major enemy fortress, where Korath commanders gathered their remaining forces for a final stand. His troops advanced with breaching tactics perfected in Earth's post-war ruins, confronting warriors who now realized too late they faced predators far deadlier than themselves. The battle ended without surrender or prisoner exchanges, only the utter destruction of every Korath military asset in Proxima Centauri. Human doctrine turned a rescue into a lesson broadcast across the galaxy as surviving enemies fled to carry warnings home. Morrison stood among the ruins, watching his soldiers secure the shattered command center. Valari civilians emerged cautiously from hiding, seeing liberation delivered by beings beyond imagination, creatures combining terrifying lethality with impossible compassion. Humanity's nature had always fused protective instinct with absolute elimination of danger when necessary. News of Proxima Centauri shook Galactic Union Command as reports arrived from the few Korath survivors, describing capabilities that defied civilized warfare and species classifications alike. Union monitoring stations recorded every moment. Archiving tactics military scholars would study for centuries: 12 heavy cruisers, 40 destroyers, gone in under 6 hours to a single human vessel treating the engagement like routine extermination. The New Frontier's precision defied conventional logic. Morrison filed his after-action reports with calm detachment, outlining Korath weaknesses and recommendations for eradicating similar threats. Human military databases quietly revised threat categories to account for predators of predators. Administrator Shalanis stood amid her ruined settlement, watching human medics tending survivors with impossible gentleness after annihilating 50,000 enemy troops. She struggled to reconcile unimaginable violence with equally profound compassion. Dr. Michelle Adams submitted her psychological analysis to Union intelligence, redefining Deathworld classifications. Her report described a species viewing civilian protection as absolute moral law, justifying unlimited force against those endangering innocence. Among such beings, concepts like aggression or defense became irrelevant. Survival demanded eliminating threats entirely. Surviving Korath officers carried panic homeward, describing tactics treating interstellar warfare as casually as others approached harvest or construction. Intelligence officer Zamoth warned Imperial High Command about predators who fought like planetary forces of nature. Across the galaxy, enslaved worlds received news of liberation with disbelief and desperate hope. Resistance movements began transmitting secret requests for what they carefully called consultation on defensive measures. Union Central Command. Emergency sessions convened across Union space to address what diplomatic reports now termed the human question, struggling to craft policies for dealing with a species whose technology and military capabilities exceeded anything recorded in historical archives. Traditional labels of aggressive or peaceful seemed meaningless when describing beings able to shift instantly from explorers to executioners, guided by moral judgment rather than conquest or territory. The Korath Empire staggered toward collapse as word spread that their supposedly invincible war machine had been dismantled in days by predators who regarded their elite forces as mere inconveniences. Within a week, rebellion ignited on 17 conquered worlds. Slave camps erupted as prisoners realized someone existed out there who could permanently end their suffering. 3 weeks after Proxima Centauri, Union monitoring stations received another desperate transmission from a distant sector. The predatory Skarath Confederacy had begun enslaving primitive farming colonies. The plea for help ended abruptly as transmitters fell silent. But Union sensors detected familiar energy signatures streaking toward that region at impossible velocities. Captain Morrison intercepted the emergency call while the New Frontier underwent resupply. At a remote human outpost near the galactic rim, his crew spent the intervening days analyzing Korath data, uncovering networks of predatory empires that had expanded unopposed for centuries. When his reinforced task force deployed, the Skarath Confederacy ceased to exist within 4 hours. The operation proved Proxima Centauri had not been luck. It was doctrine. Human doctrine. Union diplomats scrambled to draft new protocols requiring warnings to aggressive species whenever distress signals risked drawing human intervention. Legal teams struggled with definitions for conflicts where entire hostile militaries vanished while civilians received unlimited protection. Admiral Catherine of the Union Fleet reviewed battle analyses with mounting unease, realizing his forces would be helpless against opponents who fought like forces of nature. Senior officers demanded immediate consultations with human strategists before future encounters turned catastrophic. Across conference halls and war rooms, predatory empires confronted an unthinkable reality. Intimidation and overwhelming firepower no longer guaranteed victory. Aggressive civilizations faced enemies who treated combat as instinct, not policy, guardians who viewed protecting innocence as outweighing politics, diplomacy, even survival itself. Union threat assessments updated across the galaxy, adding a new classification, extinction-level responders. Human patrols expanded steadily through Union space, answering every distress signal with the same relentless precision that had eradicated the Korath and Skarath. The Deathworlders had found their role in the cosmos, not conquerors or tyrants, but executioners of justice, ensuring predators could never again hunt the defenseless without paying the ultimate price.